and welcome to the third Hispanic Latinx MS Experience Summit, hosted by National MS Society. My name is Giselle Ophelia Alvarez. I'm a performing artist, most recently seen on Broadway as part of the closing company of the Phantom of the Opera. I'm a proud Cuban American, and I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in April of 2016. I am so excited to be here hosting this summit and connecting with people in our MS community. Let's start getting to know each other. Please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat box. Share your name, where you're from, and if you're comfortable, your connection to MS. The theme for this summit is Live Your Best Life with MS. This community is united through vibrant cultures, experiences, and stories. Today, we hope to empower you so that you can live your best life with MS. To me, that means making choices every day that are going to serve me the best for that day. Some days it looks like going to the gym, taking a dance class, or spending time with family and friends. Some days it looks like taking lots of naps and rest. Listening to my body and feeding it what it needs helps me feel active and live my best life with MS. We'd like to thank our contributors. Support from community partners helps the society reach their goals, including providing up-to-date information and support through programs like this. A big thank you to our convening contributor, Genentech, and contributors Amgen and Sanofi. We'd also like to extend our gratitude to our community collaborative members. Several of this year's speakers and panelists are part of the collaborative. Your dedication and creativity have brought this year's summit to life. Our community has often been underserved and underrepresented in the MS movement. This summit aims to change that by building connections and communities so no one faces MS alone. We also have many engaging opportunities for you. Some of them include our Spanish New to MS program, our Spanish Ask an MS Expert, and our Get Involved opportunities, which include self-help groups and MS ambassadors. We have expanded our Spanish website, programs, and materials to make it easier for our community to get the support they need. The summit will begin with an educational session focused on managing MS over time. Later, you will have the opportunity to join breakout sessions. These will focus on comprehensive MS care and emotional resilience in MS. Sessions are engaging spaces to ask questions to experts in the field. Come ready to participate. We also invite you to join our community meetups. This year's meetup will focus on Faces of MS and features a panel-style conversations with individuals affected by MS. Hear about their journeys and feel free to share your own. Now, let's get started with our educational session, Managing MS Over Time. MS is unpredictable, and how you manage it will change. Navigating the healthcare system can be one of the most challenging aspects of the MS journey. Language barriers and racial and economic inequalities can make it even harder. These factors often hinder trust in providers and comfort in speaking up. In this session, you'll learn how to manage your MS over time, advocate for yourself, and how to build a strong healthcare plan that works for you. Over time, I have built systems to manage my MS to help me feel my best. I have a therapist who I speak to weekly. I try to limit the amount of food I eat from restaurants, preferring to cook at home with fresh produce from local farms to nourish my body. I also have a great support system with my family, friends, and doctors. They remind me that I'm not alone and that I can rely on them to be there to help me to navigate the good days, the bad days, and everything in between. Today, as I host the third annual Hispanic Latinx MS Experience Summit, I am so proud for this space. I hope you enjoy all the sessions we have prepared for you, and I truly hope you feel inspired to live your best life with MS. To learn more about how to manage your MS over time is Dr. Luis Marinque Trujillo. Dr. Marinque Trujillo is a MedStar Georgetown University Hospital neurologist. Welcome.
Thank you, Giselle. And first of all, I want to thank all the organizers and the audience for joining us today. It's a pleasure for me to talk at the Hispanic Latinx Summit today. I have joined the meeting before. I know that is a great moment for all of our MS patients, and I'm happy that I will be able to contribute this time. First, we should talk about when we think about managing MS over time, is we should talk about MS being an immune-mediated disease that actually affects each patient in a different way. And what that means is that not two people have the same type of disease or experience with it. And MS uh, can cause a multitude of symptoms that depend on the location and severity of the damage of the CNS. But every single individual will have different deficit from it. And when we see that MS is a unique experience, then we also will understand how the disease impacts each person. It can the time when the patients have their onset, it can be a time of grief, frustration, anger, full of anxiety. It can be difficult to accept the diagnosis oftentimes. And then after being diagnosed, patients go through different grief stages. They will need to learn to live with the disease, and then they will need to go through a process of emotional resiliency, and how to manage the unpredictability of the disease. It can be very difficult every time that a patient has a relapse. It can be a new start over of all of these feelings and emotional responses. So I think that it's very important for us to mention that our patients um, should be supported by a big healthcare provider team and also by a social support network that can help them to navigate throughout these difficult times. Next slide, please. So the multitude of symptoms that a patient can have, these are just the most common ones, but probably you can add 3 or 4 more slides of different symptoms someone can experience. So fatigue being the most common one, close to 90% of patients with MS will experience fatigue. And this type of fatigue can be different for each patient. For some patients, it's the difficulty staying awake, being aware of their surroundings. For other patients, is more weakness in their extremities, is a lack of strength, a lack of energy to complete their daily tasks. Then we were going to be talking about sensory changes, numbness or tingling, our patients experience. That's actually the most common symptom that triggers a consult to a neurologist, having numbness or tingling, followed by visual loss. And if you think about it, our brains are complex enough that every relapse will have a different time of presentation, different progression, and sometimes it can be very difficult to tell if these symptoms are coming from MS or if they are due to a different issue. So our patients experiencing these symptoms in the slide, of course, are gonna feel overwhelmed. They oftentimes will have issues dealing with the symptoms, and that's actually part of the process. And I want to reassure all of our audience that um, you are definitely not alone in this process, but the uniqueness of your disease has made his way complex enough that it can be difficult to understand for you as a patient and for us, for providers as well, for your family, for your friends. So the more you talk to them, the better we'll be able to understand and help you. So I want to talk about invisible MS. And why is that? Because most of our patients, by the time that they get diagnosed, they they are usually with a significant neurological issue, meaning motor weakness, visual loss, sensory loss, balance difficulties, and those are usually the symptoms that trigger the diagnosis. The what we call the visible MS, things that we can see, that we can see in our daily life, and also that we are able to demonstrate in our neurological examination. But how about invisible MS, symptoms that actually are the most common cause of disability in patients with MS, but we cannot quantify? It's very challenging for providers, for family, friends to understand what's the patient living with. Here's a list of them, but I think we are not including cognitive issues because we think that that's actually something that we can quantify, or fatigue. But actually, these symptoms are fatigue and cognitive difficulties are symptoms that only a patient who is living with MS and is able to tell how difficult it is to navigate the world with them. And as I was mentioning, these are the most common cause of disability for our patients. And you will oftentimes hear about, family or friends asking the patient, "Hey, you look so good. So do you even have MS?" Or even the patient themselves, they come to the office and they ask, "Am I just getting older? This is just part of the aging, that this extreme fatigue, these challenges I have with my mood, these word finding difficulty, these issues I have, in my work." And completing my daily tasks, my daily living tasks. Is that just like I'm just getting older? I'm just getting forgetful. So I just think that we need to highlight that in most cases this is actually coming from your MS, and even though it's difficult to address them, there might be some strategies that we can discuss that can actually improve your quality of life. Even though 85% of patients living with MS have periods of remission, and that's the reason why they used to call that subtype of the disease as relapsing remitting MS. Now we're changing the nomenclature. We are talking now about relapsing multiple sclerosis because we know that MS does not remit. It's not like cancer when you get treatments, then you can be on remission. That's not actually the case. MS continues over time, even though you are experiencing progressive symptoms or not. The inflammatory and the other microscopic processes are still going on in the background. So some people eventually will progress to what they used to call in the past historically as secondary progressive MS. We're actually moving away from that. And the reason is because it's just is people are just getting too confused about MS being two different type of conditions. And we think that people that experience progression, who started as relapsing MS, an underlying smoldering inflammation occurring in the background underneath our eyes. So the reason why we have become more aggressive and more medications are coming into the market is because we want to prevent this progression happening to our patients. So now we are focusing a lot on stopping the relapses, but also delaying the progression in patients that are already experiencing MS progression. Unfortunately, we are not that good at treating progression at this point, but there's a lot of research going on, medications that are undergoing clinical trials as we speak, and we're hoping that that's going to make a huge impact in patients that are experiencing progression. And the other thing is that I wanted to use this slide to talk about how we used to measure MS in the past. And then what you're seeing there with the cartoons is that we had this a scale that is called EDSS, Expanded Disability Status Score, and they based that score on military people. So the Dr. Kurtzky was the one who invented this scale. He was part of the military. So if you are approaching an EDS as a score of 5 or 6, then it's probably time for you to be discharged from the military. So it turns out that we're still using this scale for patients in clinical trials and in our clinical practices. But I just think that it's very inappropriate because by the time that you are at a score of 5 or 6, it might be too late in terms of progression. So we need better ways to measure outcomes. We need different scores, and we are working on that. We're trying to change that, because that might change the way that we see MS patients. MS, as I was explaining earlier, um, has a lot of different inflammatory processes going in the background. And there are other symptoms, such as the invisible symptoms we're talking about, we might be able to monitor over time. So that brings us to the core of our talk, which is MS over time and how to manage it over time. Your MS is different from any other individuals living with MS. It does depend on your age and the time since diagnosis. It does change with when you have other health conditions such as hypertension, diabetes. We know those patients tend to get more disability over time. It does change with disease modifying therapies and other interventions such as physical, occupational, or speech therapy. And then, of course, your lifestyle. A healthy lifestyle, we usually recommend our patients to um, exercise at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes each time. If they can do even more, that's great. And actually, the way that we're talking about this is that having or being able to exercise or being physically active at least 3 times a week is as important as being on a disease modifying therapy. It's a combination of both things that can keep you stable. Diet, there have been a lot of different diets historically that have been recommended for patients with MS. We right now at our MS center, we are mainly recommending our patients to follow a diet that is good for their hearts. The most common one is called Mediterranean diet, and we think that that makes a significant difference. It helps with cardiovascular health, but it also helps with brain health. And then finally, like is smoking cessation. If you're able to stop smoking or minimize alcohol, that also can help your entire system, and it will help your MS at the same time. When we think about our support network, oftentimes the first thing that comes to our mind is the main caregiver, which is for our patients, for many of our patients, especially the Hispanic Latinx, that means family or their spouses or their children, and then of course it's important to be connected with your friends as well. There is something else that is really important in this support network is being in touch, if possible, with other patients with MS. Even though there are not two individuals that have the same MS experience, it will help to know that you are not completely alone in this process. And I have interacted with MS MS patients group, and they actually they do very well. They learn about more about their disease, what are things that they are looking forward to. But they also can focus not only learning about the symptoms from MS and the different issues navigating the disease, they can also focus on the good, the the positive things. And actually, this week I was sharing with one of these groups, and they like to share something positive that had happened to them during the past week. I was surprised, even like small details or minimal things that had happened can have a significant impact in your emotional health. And that's important to share and to share it with other people that have the same disease. When we think about managing MS over time, is creating an alliance with different providers from the healthcare system. And we when we focus on you as a person living with MS, there are different things you will need down the road. And it's not only focusing on the specialty care, but also the rest of the team members that will interact with you. Like very important, your mental health, taking care of your mental health, taking care of the integrative medicine component, being able to see you and evaluate you comprehensively. um, of course, you might be familiar with the importance of getting MRIs and laboratory tests if you're on a disease-modifying therapy. And of course, being aware of all the social determinants of health that can actually change the course of your disease. And there are some there. This is not only about the financial situation, but also your access to appointments, your access to healthcare providers, also your ability to understand all the interventions that they are suggesting for you and how you can navigate all of those. So is very relevant for you as a patient to be aware that you should be the center and all the different components playing a role in your care. And then it's a whole team of people. Then the neurologist or the MS specialist is in one side, but then you will also need nurses, you will need pharmacists, you will need mental health providers such as counselors, psychiatrists, you will need rehabilitation providers, such as physical, occupational, or speech therapists, and you will be the center of it, but then they will need to communicate with each other so they can learn about what are the best alternatives of treatments that we have for you. And of course, and I want to highlight here how the National MS Society can also play an important role for many of our patients. They can be a big resource for you. There are different not only information they can share with you. There is financial assistance, and there are other specialists and providers they can find for you as well. So it's very important that you get in touch with the National MS Society early on in the disease. So what's our role as neurologists? As you probably noticed in the prior two slides, you are the center of this big healthcare team, but the neurologist can be very important and trying to coordinate the care. Of course, like having you as the a captain of the ship, but they can be good advisors, and then they can communicate with the rest of the providers. For us as neurologists, probably you will notice that we're going to focus a lot on the time when we're going to start disease modifying therapy. And sometimes that can be challenging because there are a lot of considerations. We have around 25 medications approved by the FDA to modify MS, and then the decision actually It can be difficult in terms of adjusting to what's best for your lifestyle and what's best for you for the MS stage you are on. So this has to be a shared decision making. If you find that your provider or the person in charge of prescribing the DMT is not talking to you or taking you into consideration, I just usually recommend people to think about finding someone different, finding an MS specialist or a neurologist for MS that would take care of the MS is like finding a fit. Um, so it might take some time, but it's someone that needs to be involved with what's important to you. We're talking a lot now about cultural competence, so they need to understand your values. And at the end, it's an alliance. He or she or they need to be your ally and work with you. So these decisions are not supposed to be unilateral. They do have to include a lot of factors, hopefully even including your family, your friends, your support network, trying to understand what's the best option for you. And then the shared decision making part is going to play a role in what is coming next, and that's actually monitoring for relapses and for progression, addressing and managing your symptoms. So we, as neurologists, we are there to support you. Again, you are the captain of the ship. We'll be good advisors, and then we'll be also be helping you to navigate the entire healthcare system and the disease. Next slide. So that's why it's important for you to try to make most of your appointment. And as important as making the most of your appointment is probably trying to find someone who could be a good fit for you. So now when you have an appointment with an MS provider or other healthcare providers, um, then you will need to make the most of your appointment. So you will need to make a checklist of different things you will need to bring, um, including prior healthcare providers you have seen. Bring all the records that you may have from them. That can actually save a lot of time. Knowing the names of your medications, vaccinations, um, and then bring probably your notes and probably bringing questions for your provider also can help, because oftentimes you will find out that you forgot to ask something that was important to you. If you are able to write that down and bring it to the appointment, that will be very helpful. And being ready, being open to discuss with them your complete medical history, and if possible, even bringing a symptom journal might be also something that can help both of you as well. And I want to finish this talk talking about the importance of shared decision making when you think about managing MS over time, and that includes the center of the discussion and the decisions is gonna be you as a patient, but then you can help your providers to offer the best options for you if you educate them as well. So the way that you educate them is when you ask questions, when you interject or reply to what they are saying to you. You can explain them your point of view, your goals, your priorities. Um, again, when you find a provider that is a good fit for you, of course, you will have time limitations during your appointments. You can always ask for a different appointment to kind of like expand on that issue that is really important for you. And then this open way to communicate will help you to build a strong relationship with them. You will find eventually that there are some providers that are more culturally competent than others. If you feel like there is someone who is a good fit for you, you can tell them that probably they're gonna be open to learn more about your values, about what's important for you. and they might be able eventually to gain that cultural competency from you, from learn from your culture and understanding that. When it comes to addressing language barriers, there are many places where you will find patient advocates or interpretation services. So those places are usually big academic centers. But if that's not possible, then you might need to bring a friend or a family member who is able to communicate your needs better, and that's something that I highly recommend. And find a good way to communicate with that a provider that doesn't speak your language, and especially and now that we are in the summit for Hispanic Latinx, and we know how difficult it is to communicate when your English is your second language. So be aware and be ready to optimize that communication with your provider. That might make a significant difference in your MS journey. And I want to finalize thanking all of you for your time. I look forward to keep sharing experiences with all of you during the rest of the summit.